Hi everyone. Now let's continue to discuss on JUnit 5 assertions. And in this lecture we will discuss about assert timeout preemptively method. So here assertions API provide a static assert timeout preemptively method. So this method works very similar to assert timeout method, which we discussed in our last lecture. So this method is also used to test long running tasks. So basically if we want to test the performance of our code, then we can use assert timeout or assert timeout preemptively method. So what it does is, if the given task inside the test case take more than the specified duration, then the test case will fail or else it will pass. So assert timeout preemptively method takes in a duration of time and an executable code. So if the executable code, which is our task, takes more than the specified time, then the test case fails. If our task is finished before the duration of time provided, then our test case will pass. So the only difference between assert timeout and assert timeout preemptively is that in assert timeout, the executable which we provided got executed in the same thread as that of the calling code, which was nothing but our test case. But in assert timeout preemptively method, the executable provided to the test case will be executed in the different thread as that of the calling code. So here, as the executable is running in different thread, it gives an advantage, and the advantage is the timeout which we have provided. If the executable reaches that time, the test case is preemptively aborted. So what it means, in assert timeout method, let's say we provided a duration of 1 millisecond, and if the long running task took 10 milliseconds, that as the executable ran in the same thread, it took complete 10 seconds to execute the code provided into executable function interface. So the test case had to wait for executable to finish. But in assert timeout preemptively, what happens if we have provided a duration of say 1 millisecond and the executable takes 10 milliseconds to run? So what happens, as soon as 1 millisecond is reached, the execution of executable is preemptively aborted. So our failure result doesn't have to wait for 10 milliseconds to get displayed on JUnit console. As soon as 1 millisecond is exceeded, the execution is aborted. So this is one advantage of assert timeout preemptively over assert timeout. Now let's see the overloaded methods of assert timeout preemptively. So the first method takes in a duration and an executable code. So this duration is a time which we provide, and the executable is the code which we want to execute within this time limit. The second overloaded method takes in a duration, an executable, and a customized string message. So if our assert timeout preemptively assertion fails, in the JUnit console we will see that the test case has failed, and we will also see the customized message which we have provided to this method. The third overloaded method takes in a duration, an executable, and a supplier function interface. So this supplier function interface acts as a message supplier. It supplies a message in a form of a string. So the only difference between these two methods is that this supplier function interface gets lazily evaluated to a string only when the test case fails. But in the second overloaded version, this string message gets evaluated every time whether our assertion passes or fails. So friends, let's go to Eclipse and see the demonstration of assert timeout preemptively method. So friends, in our last lecture we discussed about assert timeout. We saw how assert timeout works, and what are its different overloaded methods. So in this lecture we will discuss about assert timeout preemptively method. So here I will be creating a class which would be our test class. I will give a name to it as assert timeout preemptively demo. I will keep it in a package assert timeout preemptively. We'll click finish. So friends, as most of the functionality of assert timeout and assert timeout preemptively is same, I will just copy all the three test cases and will reuse it in assert timeout preemptively demo class, and I will show you the difference between assert timeout and assert timeout preemptively. So here I will just paste the three methods. So let's see the demonstration of first overloaded assert timeout preemptively method. So I'll give the test name as assert timeout preemptively with no message. So friends, here we have created the instance of book service class, and what we are doing here is we are testing book service class, and basically we are testing get book titles by publisher method, which takes in a publisher and returns us back the list of titles which matches to this publisher. So here, after creating the book service instance, we are creating 10,000 books whose book ID is nothing but the value of I from 1 to 10,000, and let's say we are giving the title as Head First Java and the publisher Vrox, and then we are creating a list of string which is nothing but the actual titles which will be returned by get book titles by publisher method. So here, instead of assert timeout, we will use assert timeout preemptively method. So we'll import it from assertions class. So this is the first overloaded method which takes in a duration and an executable. So here we are giving the duration of 1 millisecond, and as an executable we are providing a lambda expression, and inside this we are calling the book service get book titles by publisher, and we are providing the value as Vrox as a publisher. So whatever will be returned from this method, we are storing it into an actual titles list, and finally we are asserting that the size of this list of string storing titles should be 10,000, because we have added 10,000 books of publisher Vrox. So friends, here you can see as list of books in book service has 10,000 books. So when we do get book titles by publisher and we pass a Vrox, then it iterates over 10,000 books and compare the publisher which we have passed here to each and every book, and once it founds that book, it adds to the list, and finally it returns the list which we store in our actual titles. So doing this task, it requires some time to execute. So let's say I give the duration of 1 millisecond, that I want to test the performance of this method, that it should not go more than 1 millisecond, and if it goes more than 1 millisecond, then our assertion should fail, stating that there is a chance of improvement in writing the get book titles by publisher method. So friend, assert timeout preemptively and assert timeout works very similar, but the only difference is this executable code in assert timeout preemptively runs in a different thread. So what happens, as it is running in different thread, as soon as the 1 millisecond time is reached, this executable is aborted and our assertion fails. So we get the result in 1 millisecond only. But here in assert timeout, if we have provided the duration as 1 millisecond and get books title by publisher took, let's say, 10 milliseconds, then as this executable is running in the same thread, we had to wait for 10 milliseconds for this assertion to fail. But here in assert timeout preemptively, this executable is aborted as soon as it reaches 1 millisecond. So if I run the test case now, so here you can see that the test case got failed with an assertion failed error, and here you can see it gave the message as execution timed out after 1 millisecond. So it just took 1 millisecond to let us know that this get book titles by publisher has performance issues. So friends, this was the first overloaded method of assert timeout preemptively. Now let's see the second overloaded method of it. So I'll give the name as assert timeout preemptively with message. So here the scenario remains the same. We give a duration of 1 millisecond. We provide an executable. So in this overloaded method, we also provide the third parameter, which is the string message. Now this message gets printed whenever our assertion will fail. So here, if I add 10,000 books and I run the code, so here you can see that the test case got failed. So it gave the default message as execution timed out after 1 millisecond, but it also printed our own customized message saying performance issue with get book titles by publisher method. So friend, this is the second overloaded method of assert timeout preemptively. Now let's see the third overloaded method. So let's change the name as assert timeout preemptively with message supplier. So the scenario remains as it is. We are adding 10,000 books. We are searching for book titles having publisher as Vrox. We are giving the duration of 1 millisecond in assert timeout preemptively method. But here only changes, instead of string, we are providing a supplier function interface. So when our assertion fails, this supplier function interface comes into picture and it provides the customized message which we have passed it here. So this is the function interface. So the syntax is, we give a lambda expression like this, and as soon as our assertion fails, this function interface gets evaluated to a string which we have provided here. So the only advantage of using the supplier function interface over the string message directly is that this supplier function interface only gets evaluated to a string whenever test case fails. So if I run the test case now, you see the test case got failed with an assertion failed error, and the error is exactly the same which we saw in our second overloaded method. So friend, let's suppose instead of adding 10,000 books, I reduce the number of books and I make it 1000 in all the three test cases. So here you can see, now this get book titles by publisher will take less time to get the list of book titles by publisher. So if I run all the test cases now, you can see all the test cases got passed because this executable took less than 1 millisecond. So friends, in this lecture we saw the demonstration of assert timeout preemptively method. I hope you liked this video. Thanks, have a nice day.